In today's video, we're checking out the Kinefinity Eagle 1080p Viewfinder. This EVF is a nice addition to any existing cage or cine rig setup where you're looking for a pro EVF with Filmmaker tools built directly into it. And guess what? It's built like a tank. Let's get into it. Welcome back, folks. My name's Shane. In today's video, we're checking out the Kinefinity Eagle HDMI Viewfinder. This viewfinder offers a lot of cool features for filmmakers or creators looking for a flexible EVF that can be mounted directly onto a cage or camera system. If you own a box camera like the Lumix BS1H or BGH1, or even something like a Sony FX3 or FX6, this would be a really great choice for those kind of setups. Today's video will be a mix of a review and tutorial showcasing how the unit functions, as well as all of the great tools built directly into it for filmmaking or documentary work. At the time of this review, the price for this on B&H is $1,299 US, so it's not cheap. We'll weigh up the value of this at the end of the video. Now, before we get into it, a massive thanks to Kinefinity for sending this out for this review video. I really appreciate it. All thoughts about this are my own, and Kinefinity don't get to preview this ahead of time. If you'd like to check it out, I'll leave some links down in the description box below. Let's talk about the things that matter most when it comes to the actual viewing experience. And just know the only way to show you the menu system is by filming the EVF screen itself, but just know it looks way better with the naked eye. The Eagle is loaded with a 1.8 centimeter micro-OLED panel, which offers a native 1920 by 1080 or HD 16 by 9 display. This OLED has an impressive 10,001 contrast rating and fully supports 10-bit colors. Thanks to the diopter, you can dial in a really clear image. The colors, contrast, and overall brightness looks better on this than any of my cameras. The tension on the diopter feels like any great manual focus lens with a nice amount of tension. This is not going to move if you accidentally knock the diopter ring. This viewfinder is compatible with any HD frame rates from 24p all the way to 60p, and this includes all the native PAL and NTSC frame rates within these formats. It also supports true 24 Hz. The EVF itself has a maximum refresh output rate of 60 Hz. The body material is aluminum alloy or aluminium, steel, and glass, and it weighs in at only 348 grams or 12.2 ounces. The build quality is excellent, and it was a pleasant surprise to see just how well made this viewfinder is. The buttons, back dial, ports, and eye cup are all excellent. There's two USB-C ports. The first is for powering the unit, and the second is for upgrading the firmware. On the lower section of the unit, we get the HDMI input and HDMI output. The output is a clean feed only by the looks of it, which is why I have to film the eyepiece. The unit itself has no built-in fan, so there's no additional noise generated by this unit whatsoever. The entire body of this looks like one big heatsink, so there shouldn't be any issues with overheating. There's some ventilation on both the side here and also on the base. The back wheel here is also a push button, which helps you navigate the menu system, which I'll show you shortly. The main menu button is on the top, along with 3 programmable custom buttons for instantly recalling your favorite tool. Now, the power switch is on the bottom section of the unit here, and on the top there's a big red button as well, which by default is the waveform, and again, you can map this to whatever tool or feature you like. Lastly, this EVF does need to be powered. It doesn't have a built-in rechargeable battery, but it can be powered indefinitely thanks to USB-C power delivery. Because there's no internal battery, this won't work as a hot shoe EVF for cameras like the FX3 or Lumix S9. You'll have to have a rig sorted out to be able to use this. We get a dual HDMI to USB-C cable here, which is provided in the box, so it's nice and easy to get up and running. Let's take a look at the menu system on the electronic viewfinder here, and the only way I can show you this is by filming into it. So just keep that in mind. The quality of this section won't be anywhere near as good as it looks actually with your eye. So tap the menu button on top of the EVF like I showed you earlier, and this will bring up this particular menu. Now, by using the scroll wheel on the back of the EVF, we can select between all of these different options here, which is cool. Now, if we push in the scroll wheel on tools, you can see that we've got all of these different options here. We've got focus assist, so you can turn it on and off from this menu. We've got focus assist settings here. We can change between peaking, and there's also sharpen as well if you prefer to work that way. Sensitivity here is set to 10, and you can bring this up or down depending on your needs. This is how prominent focus peaking is. If we go down to mode here, we've got color, and there's also monochrome, which I think is a great addition. And lastly, down here, we've got outline color. We can select between red, green, white, black, yellow, magenta, and cyan, and that is it. So you can select which one works best for you. To go back to the previous menu, all you have to do is tap the menu button again. It will take us into this option right here, which is nice and easy. And then we can use the wheel again to cycle down to the next one, which is Waveform. So as I explained earlier, you can tap the big red button on top of the EVF to bring up the waveform, or you can turn it on and off from this menu. So that's really cool. We can change the waveform size between medium, full, and also large over here as well. So that's nice. Medium to me is enough. It's going to be impossible for me to show you that just based on the way I'm filming right now. Yeah, I've just turned it on by using the red button, but you can't see it based on the angle of view here. It's really tricky to film like this, but it pops up by default on the opposite side of the menu. We also get a histogram that we can toggle on and off. There's also some histogram settings here. You can see we can change the size, and we can also change the type from Luma to RGB. Just below the histogram settings on the previous menu, we now have our zebra or zebra options here, which we can turn on and off. You can also change the threshold here into a percentage that works best for your particular camera system. We have the ability to turn false color on or off as well, which is great. I know it's a bit hard to see, but this bottom one is the zoom amount basically. So this is the percentage of the zoom from 200 to 250 all the way up to 300%. If you like to use markers, we've got a bunch of different guidelines here, including frame lines, which you can turn on and off. You can also change the frame line settings here, and you can choose an aspect ratio. So there's plenty of different aspect ratios to choose from under this menu, which is awesome. If you're shooting anamorphic, it's going to work as well, which is cool. If we go back here, the type changes what the border looks like. So we've got full box with dash, corner, and small corner. So this is really handy. You can just sort of make it look the way that you like. Let's go down to fit here. This is the size of the markers themselves. So you can see we can go 100%, or we can bring it all the way down to 40 is the lowest. From this menu, we can turn shading on and off, and we've got a color option, which allows us to change the colors of the frame from white, black, green, red, yellow, magenta, and cyan. So the same colors that we saw on the previous options. You have the ability to also change the line width as well. If you need a thicker border, you can change this. If you need a thinner border, you can also change it all the way down to 1. One of my favorite tools on cameras and any on-camera field monitor, and now this EVF, is also the center marker. I love having this on. You can kind of see it. It looks blurry, and again, it doesn't look blurry to the eye. It's just the way that I'm filming. You can also change the center marker settings here as well. Let's take a look at this. We've got small cross, we can change it to big cross, cross 2, small dot, big dot, and that is it. So there are all the options there, which is really cool. I'd probably just leave it set to big cross. And I love the fact you can also change the color again from all of these different options. Same colors that we saw earlier, which is cool. If you want to change the line width of the center marker, you can go into this menu here, and you can make it thinner by adjusting it lower, or make it thicker by bringing it up. From the image option here, we can go in and change the brightness of the EVF. It's currently set to normal. You can change it to high, which is much brighter, as you can see, or we can bring it all the way down to low. And you can probably see the difference on screen. Now, I've had it set to normal the entire time, and I've exposed for that, so that's where I'm going to leave it. You can also use image flip here, which flips the image upside down. So I'm going to leave that off just so it doesn't mess with your head. But if you've got the EVF in a situation where you've got it tilted backward, you can then, of course, just flip it and see it up the correct way. There's also an anamorphic mode on and off here as well. And you've also got the anamorphic ratio, which you can set so that it goes all the way down to 0.67, all the way up to all of these. So these are all the different aspect ratios for anamorphic, and it doesn't have all of them. You know, there is 1.6 missing, but it's got most of them. So you can probably find one here that works. From the settings tab here, we can go into the settings for the electronic viewfinder themselves. So these aren't the tools, these are just settings. We can turn off the EVF tally light on and off, the record tally on and off. We've got our user buttons here, which I want to show you as well. So if we go into here, you can see that 1, 2, 3 are all set to these custom presets. So we've got focus assist, false color, zoom, and the big red button on top of the unit is set to waveform. You can change these to whatever you like, which I really like. And I should also point out before we have a look at that the knob control is the wheel on the back, and this allows you to change the orientation of turning it. So if you want to change it to clockwise, you can as well. That's from this menu, but I like it counterclockwise, so that's where I'm going to leave it. And if we go back up to focus assist here, on number 1, we can change it to any of these options that you see on screen. So you can fully customize this EVF with the tools that are most important to you. You can update the firmware by connecting to that second USB-C port that I showed you earlier. We can do a full factory reset on the unit. If you've got it set up in a way that isn't working for you, you can do a factory reset from in here. There's also different languages built into this, and you can find them via this language menu. Now, if you'd like to change the on-screen display language from English to something else, you can do it via this menu, and I'll leave a list of all the different languages on screen if I can find those details. If you want to conserve some battery life here, you can change the display off feature from 60 minutes all the way down to, I think, 1 from memory. Yep, all the way down to 1, or you can leave it on indefinitely. So that's a really cool option if the screen is not in use. If you like to work with just a clear screen, you can turn overlay clear on. And what this allows you to do is essentially still see the menu if you bring it up, but everything else will be set to off. The About page allows you to see the serial number, the firmware version, and also the runtime of the unit. If you take a look down the bottom here, it says HDMI 1080p at 25 frames per second. So 25 frames per second is the current frame rate currently on my GH6 that's going into this, and it displays that information on the EVF itself. I've just changed the camera over to 50p, and as you can see, it updates the information on screen. All right, let's wrap this up. I'm going to talk about who this is for and whether or not it's a good value item. So odds are, if you're looking for an electronic viewfinder of this quality, you're doing some serious professional work. This isn't for the hobbyist. This is for someone who wants all the same readouts and tools found on larger field monitors in an eyepiece. There's a few reasons why an EVF like this is really powerful. The first reason is if you're shooting with, say, a Lumix camera, it doesn't actually output the waveform via HDMI, and that's where this comes in handy. So you could be running a full-blown on-camera field monitor and this separately and have different tools on different monitors, which I really like. So you could have waveform set up on this using the internal one. You could see it on the back of the LCD screen on your camera, and then have a much larger monitor set up for viewing and use a whole set of different tools. Another huge benefit is if you're shooting with an older camera that might not have all the same tools and features of this electronic viewfinder, you've now got them in a single unit. This is definitely not the sort of electronic viewfinder you can just pop onto your camera and use. It requires a complete cage or filmmaking setup to get the most out of it. When I heard that this was on the way to the house for this particular review, I thought I'd be able to sort of like slap it on my Lumix S9 and hook it up via HDMI. But that's not the target audience of this. This unit is a very niche product for high-level filmmakers wanting to add a very impressive EVF to their kit. This is brighter and looks a lot more real life than the EVF on my GH6 and 7. And while those EVFs on the cameras aren't class leading, they're still quite nice. And this is a really good improvement. Now, just to let you know, this is the first electronic viewfinder I've tested outside of ones built onto a camera system, and I'm very impressed. I would also love to see Kinefinity release one that's less expensive, maybe without all the same tools, that can be used on any mirrorless camera. I think that would be great, and it would also have to have an internal rechargeable battery, something that I could just pop onto any camera that doesn't have an EVF, or if the EVF on the camera is no good, that would be really cool. But for serious filmmakers, that's where this really shines. Drop a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the bell for future videos. And if you don't want to wait for my next video, click this one on screen right over here, and I'll see you on the next one. Catch you soon.